Immersed Robot.
Hello everyone, welcome to Immersed Robot, and I'm just in this video testing out the new VR mod by Praydog for Resident Evil 7. So, quick thank you to Stavros Sideropoulos, who very kindly donated through PayPal to the channel, which allowed me to pick up Resident Evil 7 on the current Humble Bundle sale. So it's only, I think it was around £8.25, something like that at the moment. So for anybody wanting to pick up this game, then that's a great place to do it at the moment. Now I'm running on standard settings. I've literally got a fresh install of Resident Evil 7. I've freshly installed the mod as well, just here now, and this is my first little play test of it really. I've just wandered through that little section of forest down there. We can see that I'm running Steam VR resolution at 100% with all standard settings in game itself, just what they came as with default really. So we are sort of fluctuating around 90 FPS with those settings. It looks pretty good. It looks a lot better than when I played it on the PlayStation VR quite a long time ago now. And the implementation, the motion controller implementation feels really good. It actually feels a little bit better than it did in the Resident Evil 2 mod that I tried, which was quite a while ago again, and that was a beta, so this feels a little bit better to be honest. So let's see how we interact. So the camera is taken out of your control quite a little bit with this, to be honest. And that's one of the things that just seems to be unavoidable. So it's been a long time since I last played this, so I guess we can't get in through that front gate section. So let's have a wander around and see what we can find. So overall, first impressions are very good. Performance is actually really good considering I've got everything on quite high settings. Let's just go into the graphics options actually, just see how it run, what settings we've got on here. So if we go into graphics, so some of these might not be particularly... so I did turn off VSync actually, but I don't know if that affects the VR mod or not. So just going down here, we've got texture filtering very high, texture quality very high, anti-aliasing is using temporal anti-aliasing and FXAA. Motion blur I did turn off as well. That's the only two things there, the only two things I changed, which was VSync and motion blur. I think everything else is basically exactly the same. So shadow quality is very high, dynamic shadows, ambient occlusion, you know, it's we've got pretty high settings here, and it does reflect that. Resolution scaling in game is 1.0. I will say if there's one thing I would like to do, it's just to push up the resolution scaling slightly, but it doesn't look bad. It still looks pretty crisp and sharp for the most part anyway. So when you go in and out of the menus, you do get a little bit of a frame drop there, but it looks really good. It looks so much better than it did on the PSVR. I've gone back to the car, didn't mean to do that. So as you can tell, I don't really know what I'm doing here, so we'll just wander through. I'll try and get into the house and we'll pick it up from there. So just wandering through this section, just how it feels. The only thing I'm noticing at the moment is like the actual body just feels a little bit too far forward. I'm not too sure if you can change any of that or not. But there's plenty of VR settings, so I need to dive into that at some point. But this is just a quick initial run and just to see how it performs. But I tell you, the actual performance is better than I was expecting. Of course, you can check out my full system specs in the description to this video, but it's an RTX 3080 with a Ryzen 5 5600X CPU. So it's a relatively high-end system, but it does it's doing really well with this. I was expecting not to be able to run it at such high graphical settings really, but this is running great. I know it's a demanding game. You can tell just from the way the lighting works and all stuff like that that it's it just does seem to be very demanding, but it's coping pretty well at the moment. We'll see what it's like. I'm sure there's sections where it is going to struggle, to be honest. So yeah, you can understand like it does take control out of you in sections, and I think it's going to get a lot worse than that. But if you're sort of new to VR, you do get motion sickness easily, then I can understand why certain sections of this will sort of make some people ill. But You know, it feels very comfortable. I will say, like, I don't feel like I get that swaying sensation like I was getting in the Resident Evil 2 remake VR mod, and in certain other mods you feel like there's a certain wobble with the camera that's out of your control, and I guess that's been disabled in this anyway. But it looks spectacular, and I just wish I might try turning up the resolution scaling, but I think that will obviously drop the frame rate. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go to an extreme, so we're going to go up to 200%. This is going to be probably quite bad. But I just want to see how it looks. So let it settle down there. Let's exit out of this. So running now on 45 FPS, half frame rate. It does look a lot better. You don't quite get so much shimmering. I know it's got anti-aliasing in the menu, but you don't get quite so much shimmering on the edges with this. And it's running pretty good at 45 FPS. This was just an extreme example. I don't want to run the game like this, but you do get the motion blurring on the branches with positional movement and stuff like that. Let's drop that back down again. Let's go for compromise on 150. Yeah, so we're still on half frame rate, still at 45 FPS, but it's coping with it a little bit better. And we're not too far above the frame timing threshold for 90 FPS, so we're about 2 milliseconds over, 2 and a bit milliseconds over. So yeah, I think I'll go back to native 90 actually. So the good thing is you can change SteamVR resolution scaling on the fly in here, and it will still work great. In fact, what we could do is probably drop it down to 80 FPS. That'll give us a little bit of headroom as well, and that feels great. It looks pretty good. I would like to push up the resolution scaling, but that will involve a little bit of tinkering in the graphics, I think, just to lower a few settings, which do seem high anyway. But this is working better than I expected. It does feel in some ways like a native VR game. But obviously it's the interactions where it's going to fall down a little bit. I think it's got limited interactions. It's button presses and stuff like that, which are just things you have to deal with. It's very dark in here. Okay, so the torch is on your head. It just follows where you look. Yeah, it's just got this shimmering effect, really. It's almost as if it hasn't got any anti-aliasing at all. But we are still running pretty nicely at those 80 FPS. We're in a more enclosed area, so I would imagine this is actually, you'll get better performance inside the house, although there's a lot of detail and stuff like that. Once again, camera out of the control. And you can understand why the modder hasn't decided to put every single little section like that on a flat screen. There'd be too many, I would imagine, for it to be comfortable. Because some mods and some sort of official VR ports of certain games, they will project any areas which the camera is taken out of your control, and they'll project them on like a 2D screen. But it doesn't look like the modder has decided to do that for this, which I can honestly understand. So I'm going to try and adjust a few settings actually, and see if we can get the resolution scaling up a little bit. So I'll be back in a moment. I'll let you know what I've done to see if we can get any slightly better performance while also increasing the resolution. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so I just toyed around in the graphics menu there. So now you can see on the actually, let me just go into SteamVR. So I am now running at still at those 80 frames per second, 80 hertz in the Valve Index at now 150% SteamVR resolution scaling. And in graphics, I went to, let's just take a quick look, go through some of these. So the only things I changed were quite a few bits actually. So texture filtering, instead of very high, I went down to high. Kept anti-aliasing the same, motion blur off. Depth of field on. Shadow quality I went down to medium. Dynamic shadows off. Shadow cache off. Ambient occlusion off. Bloom off. Lens flare off. Volumetric lighting quality I put down to low. Reflections I left on. Subsurface scattering off. chromatic aberration off. And those are the things I've changed, and now we are able to run at native 80 with that slightly higher resolution scaling, which I think does make a difference. It looks slightly better to me. And we're on quite low frame timings as well. We could probably push this up to 90 for the most part. But if we if we remain on 80, then it just gives us a little bit of headroom and we shouldn't get quite so many drops. But I'm really impressed with how good it looks and how well it runs. So the other option for this, of course, is if we went up to 120 Hertz, which we can't obviously do. However, let's go into per application video settings, and we'll lock it to 60. So we can then run it at 60 FPS, and this is basically how the PSVR would run it. It would actually render at 60 FPS, and then it would interpolate it up to 120 Hertz into the PSVR headset. So this is a viable way of running it, and it's sort of locked on that 60 now. But of course, you do get those little blurring artifacts, which you would have got on PlayStation anyway. Actually, this isn't a bad way of playing it at all. I will probably take native frame rate though. So let's just quickly try. Let's turn off the per application. Go to auto there, and then we'll go to 90. And so now running at native 90 frames per second. Still under that 11.1 millisecond threshold for the most part. I'm sure we will get drops now and again, and I think certain sections, as I mentioned, I think there will definitely be certain sections that will drop down, you know, some of the set pieces maybe and stuff like that. But that's pretty much it for this video. Just a very quick first look at this this mod. Again, thank you to Stavros Sideropoulos, who supported me in order to pick up Resident Evil 7. Didn't tell me which game to pick up or anything. He just contributed to the channel and said he'd like me to use it for something. So I decided to use it for this. It seemed like a good thing to get into. And yeah, so appreciate that. And also thank you to my Patreons as well for the continuing support on the channel. Please check out some of the links if you'd like to help supporting the channel as well. Help to support the channel. But that's pretty much it for me. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.